Three, two, one, and we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Wheel Talk. Brittany, how the devil are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Fred?
I'm very, very well, thank you.
I'm flustered.
Yeah, just like me last week.
I'm good now. My computer is acting up, so I was like getting on my phone quickly and trying to like do stuff, and I'm here now. We're good.
Nice. Brittany was having technical issues right before we began, but now we are here.
Yes.
What have you got for us this week, Brittany?
Uh okay, well, let's start with what the title of the live is. Are men nicer to people with disabilities? I went out to another bar, which I like don't normally do, but it was actually not really a bar. It's like a music venue. To see Max McNown. If anybody follows him on TikTok, he's like a up and coming country singer. So I went to see him with a friend, and it was really crowded, and there was like a wheelchair section sort of that was not a real wheelchair section, but it was like taped off with a like paper sign. And so I was trying to get there with my friend, and all of the women, every time I'm like, excuse me, because it was really crowded. So they would have to like look down and, be like, oh, what's happening behind me? And they were all really snotty. Like they were all looking like, oh, like I have to move. And then all the men were like, oh, watch out. There's somebody in a wheelchair coming. Like they were so nice. And just in the last like couple of weeks, every woman I've encountered that I've inconvenienced has given me like the nastiest look, and all of the men have been super nice, like, oh no, you're like, don't worry about it. You're not bugging me. I can move. It's all good. And so I just wanted to like pose that question to you guys because in my experience, men are way nicer to women, at least in wheelchairs. I don't know about men in wheelchairs, but I get way better treatment than like from men than women. So I just thought we would start with that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point of view. I don't think had any I've noticed any discrimination from men or women. I just think in where I've been, it's just been equally quite nice. People have just been very
Yeah.
nice to me, regardless. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I honestly, my answer to that question is if there has been any, I haven't noticed it.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
well, maybe it's just a woman thing and men are like more chivalrous and willing to help. There were a couple of women. Like, I don't want to make it sound like women are all horrible because there was a couple of women that were so nice and that, were trying to make it so that I could get to my seat and all that stuff. It was just overwhelmingly when I would be like, "Excuse me, can I get through?" The women were annoyed, and it just like echoed the last weekend that I went out when the waitress, every time she came around the corner and there was like all these wheelchairs, she was like, oh, like she just like made this like horrible look. And I'm like, I'm sorry for existing. Like, I don't know what else to do. Yeah, it was just a really interesting thing. And I find that men are more accepting of like having to help. I know that like when I was in university, a couple times I've asked women to like push me up this really steep ramp in a lecture hall, and they were like, "No, I don't think so." And I'm like, "Okay." They said no, and so I'm like, "Okay." And then somebody beside them, like a guy, would be like, "Oh, I can do it. It's totally fine." And I don't know if it's because they didn't think that they could. But yeah, it's in my experience, men are nicer. But I
mm,
don't, like I said, I don't know if it's just because I'm a girl, but in general, people are really nice to me because I'm in a wheelchair. But yeah.
yeah. I do find like sometimes women can be quite mean to each other. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's sort of like intrasexual competition or stuff like that. I've heard things mentioned on podcasts and stuff, but I'm not a woman. But I've heard like women can gossip a little bit more than men, I guess. Or I've heard men don't gossip really that much, like about other men, but women, it's quite you know common for me to hear women gossip about their friend groups and stuff. And so I don't know, maybe women are just a little bit more bitchy, and that's what you're
Yeah.
experiencing.
I think in general, women are more bitchy. I know, like, experiencing, Jamie going through middle school and Jacob going through middle school, totally different. Like,
Mm.
Jacob got into a few fights, and then he would be like talking to the guy like 2 weeks later. And I'm like, are you friends with that guy? Did you just like get into a fist fight with him? And he's like, oh, yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. We're good.
Yeah,
Whereas like Jamie, their friend group is constantly like changing, and this person is now, we're going to drop this friend, or she's being mean. And I'm just like, what is happening? And Jacob's like, wow, this is a lot of drama to
Mm.
go through for such stupid stuff. Like one of Jamie's friends constantly gets mad at her if she doesn't, give her enough compliments during the day and like all these things. And Jacob's like, wow, like it's way deeper than it needs to be. So I don't remember being like that when I was in school, but I had like a bunch of really close friends that never really changed. And I also hung out with a lot of boys, whereas my kids don't hang out with the opposite sex at all. Jamie doesn't
Mhm.
have any boys that she hangs out with. Jacob doesn't hang out with girls, even though he's like almost 16. He's just like, yeah, he's like, I fumble every interaction, so we're good. I'm gonna wait till I'm older. And I'm just like, okay. But I wasn't like that. I had lots of guy friends, and I still have a lot of guy friends. So I'm not really sure what that is, but women are
Yeah.
generally more catty.
I think the social dynamics between men and women are very, very different. Like you say, men seem to be more confrontational and then sort it out, whereas women are like, be a little bit more catty, but a little bit more snide. And I'm generalizing a lot, but sometimes generalizations that they're
Yeah.
true. That's why there are stereotypes. But yeah, I think what you're experiencing is that, I think, and that's why I don't think I've experienced it, because generally men don't. Well, I mean, I've had arguments in, like, regardless of wheelchairs, like at the poker table, I've had confrontations
Yeah.
over difference of opinion or something, and it's not because I'm in a wheelchair that people won't call me out on stuff like that. But with women, I guess it's different because I'm a man, so the social dynamic is different, and I feel like if I'm in the way, or yeah, if I need help, I think, yeah, like you say, women are a little bit, just generally, like, if I need a lift up the stairs, for example, the men will be like, oh yeah, that's all right. But if I go to, like, say, for example, if I wanted to go to a yoga class and it was up the stairs and it was
Yeah.
all women, I don't think they would all be like, oh yeah, we'll lift you up immediately. I mean, maybe I'm generalizing, that hasn't actually happened to me. So, but I think, yeah, women are maybe less likely to offer physical help. um I don't know, actually. Maybe not. They're certainly not the first to volunteer when I'm in a mixed group, but I think that's because the
Yeah.
men don't give them a chance.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of difference between men and women, which sort of brings up sort of another thing that I wanted to talk about is like what's the difference and what makes the difference in people getting on with spinal cord injury. And I just watched your video this morning that you put out, and I was so surprised that I learned so much from it that I'm like, whoa, like I don't do that. That's amazing. And I think it's interesting, just the difference between men and women when they have a spinal cord injury, and how much more proactive men are, I think, after their injury. Because even now, like, there's so many things that I'm like, why didn't I know that from that video? Like the pillow thing.
Mm.
Not that the weight bench was not something that I don't do, but I'd never thought of it for like stretching and just getting on it. Um, just different things like that that are, your men are more, I don't know, maybe more confident with their physicality, maybe. I don't know what it is,
Yeah,
but
and generally more practical as well. Well, last week you spoke about, is it easier being a woman in a wheelchair? And
yeah.
we did that from the perspective of men are more likely to help, dating, etc. But I feel like being a man, because I'm stronger, like, men are
Mhm.
pretty, top heavy. So I have a much stronger upper body than you do, not because I work out more, but because genetically.
Yeah.
So it's easier for me to, like, you know, pull my upper body around than it is for you.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, practically, it's probably easier being a man, doing transfers. These are skills that you can learn. Like, you're quite, I guess, quite petite, so you don't need that much strength. But I'm really quite strong in my upper body. So yeah, that is a huge benefit. So day to day and, like, practically minded, I think maybe it is a benefit being male, in a wheelchair, because I do. And thank you so much for the kind compliments about my video as well. I did get some really lovely comments from lots of different people saying, about all the different things that I just take for granted. That's why I thought
Mhm.
I should share these. I did another video about cheap or free things that help me every day, and it was very popular. And I thought, oh well, I could do another one, and yeah, it was obviously a lot of people found it very helpful, but like these are things I take for granted every day. Can I ask you what in particular that you thought like that? Oh my God, because you've been injured longer than I. So
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear your perspective on that video, in the things in particular that helped you.
So the pants thing, I was like, I don't even know whether I could do what you're doing, but I was like, that was so fast because I lean side to side and I try and lean really far to one side so that I can get the pants up my butt. But you are, and I don't know if are you moving your hips at all when you're moving your butt back and forth? Because that
Yeah.
was like my question is when you are pulling up your pants, are you having to move like using your core to move your hips in order to pull your pants? Yeah. So I was like, I was trying to tease out the exact like dynamics of the pants thing because it was so fast. Because it probably takes me, I
Yeah.
don't know, like it takes me
Trying to
like at
think.
least.
Like, yeah, I am using my abs a little bit, but I'm also using my arms, and it's just the fact that I have my palms on the palms of my hands on my tires, and then I just,
Oh, I see.
yeah, and I hook.
Oh, I see. Like if I no, kinda. No, I don't know. I don't know. I have to practice it. But I was like, why do I not know how to do that? And I have a few friends that have talked about doing that on the toilet, but I don't understand
Yeah.
how they can do it on the toilet either. But they like doing it on the toilet because there's a hole under them. So
Hmm.
they transfer on the toilet to get dressed, which seems
Oh,
easier to them. And they do that same technique, but I don't really understand how they're doing it on the toilet. But anyway, so that was really good. I thought that pillow thing was amazing, but that you can't really take credit for because that was your girlfriend.
it was indeed.
So, and I used to sleep with a pillow in between my legs, but it would always move and it was really annoying. So now I just try and like offset my knees so that like the bone of my knee is like on the soft tissue kind of in the like the hole of my like when it's, do you know what I mean? Like if it's like I don't know, like my knees are bent like this. So one is like resting inside another, if that makes sense.
Oh, when you're sleeping.
Yeah, when I'm sleeping.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that my kneecaps aren't touching each
Mhm.
other. Um, so the pillow thing was good. I thought the stretching, like using the weight bench as a means to stretch especially your chest, because it's really hard to get an adequate chest stretch.
Mhm.
Um, and I've been getting on the floor to do it, but sometimes my shoulders really hurt.
Mm.
So just laying on like the floor to like gravity kind of do it. But the weight bench is brilliant. I have one downstairs. So I thought that was awesome. What else? There were so many things in there.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Those are the ones that stuck out. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. That's great feedback. I actually have another one, which, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, apparently Brittany has put a link in the description. Did you remember to do that?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Perfect. I have another one, which I just discovered yesterday. And it is cheap or free things to help me every day. Wet bum wipes.
Oh my, yeah, that's true. I couldn't live without that.
I just discovered them yesterday. I thought, I was like, oh yeah, because my friend had them when I went to the UK, and I was like, oh yeah, I should get some of those. And I looked for them everywhere, and I looked, I saw the makeup remover ones, and I asked ChatGPT, I was like, can you use makeup remover on your bum? And it was like, I wouldn't recommend it. I was like, okay. So I went and got some. I got some of these aloe vera ones, but yeah, they're great. Obviously, bowel routine can be quite
Messy.
messy, and yeah, these are good. I mean, like I say, today was the first day I got to use it, and it was a success.
Yeah. I just use baby wipes.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could use those as well, I suppose. I just searched for flushable
Oh,
wipes,
you
and
use the flushable ones. I don't flush mine. But if you, yeah, the flushable ones are really good. Another interesting thing from your video that you were talking about is that you do your bowel routine from the front, which I used to do my bowel routine from the front. And then I talked to a bunch of friends and people that were like commenting on my YouTube video that like men can't do it that way because they've got too much junk in front of their, butt, which they're trying to reach. Like just trying to reach around all of your, your member and all that stuff. So I started doing it from behind just to see if I could. So I scooched my butt really close, like to the front of the toilet instead of to the back.
Mm.
And it works really well too. So now I do it from behind, and it's way less messy because I can direct where my glove is going easier, and I'm not pulling it out front to take my glove off. I'm just like taking it, and I wash my hand in the water before I take my hand out of the toilet because
Oh,
I don't
really?
want to. Yeah, so I flush the toilet and then I wash my glove off and then I take it off so that there's no yucky on it.
Oh, that's a great idea. See, these tips are like reciprocal. I like this. Okay, wash the glove off before you. Yeah,
Yeah, so
because
it's
sometimes
like
you're like, ooh.
yeah, it's so yucky. And I used to not do that, but then I was like, oh, I don't want to like get UTIs and stuff. So now I wash my glove off and I pull the glove out and it's just like literally water. I'm sure like there's still germs and stuff on it. But I pull it from behind and as I'm pulling it out, both hands are behind my back and I like pull the glove off inside out. And then when I take the glove out, it's inside out.
No way.
So the back, doing it from behind, and I'm gonna do another video like updating people because I changed a lot of how I do bowel routine, and seems to work okay. The other thing that I really like about it is because I said I like washing my glove in the water before I take it out. And when I would go front ways, some toilets don't have very much water in them, so it would be really hard for me to reach the water to wash my glove
Mm.
off. But if I'm going backwards, like I can literally reach wherever the water is. It's like really
Mm.
effective for me. So yeah, so I don't know that,
That's
but it was interesting that you did it. You do it from the front when a lot of guys say they can't.
that sounds so counterintuitive to me. I don't think I could. I saw a guy. I think he's like T11 paraplegic on YouTube, and he did that, and I was like, what the hell that way? I was like, when I was able-bodied, I used to wipe my bum this way, like.
Yeah,
I used to stand up and do it. I used to stand up
yeah,
and wipe my bum, and people were like, "You stand up and wipe your bum?" Like, yeah. But now I do it from the front. I couldn't even imagine doing it that way. Like, I just don't think I could get. And yet, you reckon you can reach the water from here? I mean, Jesus, how long are your
yeah.
arms, man? Like, that is.
I
Or
don't
how
know. Maybe
shallow
I'm
is your
really.
toilet?
I don't know. My toilet looks really similar to yours, but my arms reach like way like to below my axle. Like if I'm reaching my arms down, they're
Yeah, a
like
little bit.
an inch below my axle. So I reach like it's way further than my butt if I'm sitting on the toilet. It was a little awkward at first.
Yeah, I well, I mean, everyone has like their way of doing it, right? And I think I have to, yeah, I do it from the front, you know? I just, and also, yeah, I think I can, like when you say with the glove and stuff, sometimes it is a bit messy. I can imagine just being like, ugh, you know, like whereas here, I'm like, ooh, and then I just like take it off
Yeah,
and
but the glove is inside out before I like take the glove off in the toilet because I put both hands behind my back and I'm in the toilet like or I'm like over the toilet like where my wrist is and I'm turning the glove inside out while it's still in the
uh,
toilet. So I'm not
oh,
taking it out.
yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. So, oh, I see what you mean now. But yeah, if I was that far forward, my willy would be squashed up against the thing,
Oh, yeah, it probably would.
or it would hang over. It could hang over, but normally I wee a little bit, so then I just wee on myself. So
Okay, well then maybe it won't work for you, but
this is the most
um
bizarre conversation ever. It's so funny.
it's a really funny conversation. Sorry, yeah, this took a turn, guys. I just wanted to bring it
No,
up because
no.
I thought it was interesting.
I think this is great. So I told you last week about there was a Facebook page called SCI Locker Room,
Hmm.
and the ladies have a powder room. So this was so for those of you that didn't listen last week, SCI Locker Room Facebook page is like a men only Facebook page, and there's some
Yeah.
hilarious things that go on there. And someone commented recently, "Hey guys, does anyone secretly enjoy their bowel routine?" And there were a lot of comments saying, "No, it's absolutely the worst part of my day, utterly degrading. I hate it." And I remember thinking, "Geez, like if you still feel that way, like that, I mean,
Yeah.
I've come to terms with it so long ago, you know. And
Yeah.
if I'm completely honest, I don't enjoy it, but like it's not unpleasant. This is a weird thing to say, but like I've got an incomplete injury, so I've got sensation, and there's a lot of nerve endings there. And yeah, I mean, I'm like I say, it's not pleasurable, but it's not unpleasurable. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
not like it's not amazing, but like yeah, it's not. It is what it is, and yeah, I don't. It's not my favorite part of the day, but it's by far not the worst part of the day. It is what it
Yeah.
is, and I realize I do have a privilege. Like in my particular spinal cord injury, you know, everyone's as unique as a fingerprint. But my, you
Hmm.
know, I've got abs, I've got incomplete injury, so my bowel routine doesn't take longer than 10 minutes normally. So yeah, it's in and out, and I don't mind it at all. You know, so
Yeah. I really don't have like a negative thing towards my bowel routine. Like I love a good poop because it makes me feel better. So like the bigger the poop, the happier I am. And yeah, I don't care. I've gotten over like the grossness of it. It's just neutral. Yeah, like totally neutral to me. I'm just like, whatever.
yeah.
That's interesting.
So yeah, so but now I've got the bum wet wipes. It's even more pleasurable, you know?
Yeah, exactly, right? I think that's probably one of the things that like one of the hangups that I think stops people from being happy after a spinal cord injury is just holding on to the things like that they don't want in their life. And I don't know, I think that there's just like some people who have a better people who can get over this simple stuff. It's not simple. So I don't want anybody who's newly injured that's watching this for me to be like, it's simple, just get over it. It's not, but it kind of is in the end. Like you just kind of
Yeah.
go, well, there's nothing I can do about it, so I got to do it. And I do a lot of work at the rehab hospital with newly injured patients. And I teach a class called Returning to the Community and help people with strategies to return to the community and whatever it is they want to do. And then I talk to a lot of moms, like if there's moms that are newly injured. And I met one recently who is a paraplegic and she was ready to like have a full-time caregiver. She's trying to organize it. She can't transfer or do bowel routine or do anything. And then I met another one who within like a month of being in the hospital, like she's like ready to play sports and she's like,
Mm,
I want to swim with my kids. I want to do like she's so motivated. And so I'm always curious, like, what is it that makes somebody just go, all right, there's nothing I can do about it. So what now? Instead of why me, it's a what now? Like, what is it about
mm.
somebody's character? Or I don't know. I don't know. You tell me because it's confusing to me.
You make a really good point. Like some people do deal with their injuries way better than others, and it doesn't really necessarily mean like the level of injury or like
No.
the severity of the injury. It's a mindset, and I don't know, but I don't know what it's got to do with. I think possibly it's got to do with like how you were before your injury, your mindset before your injury. Were you
Yeah.
massively independent? Were you quite positive? You know, were you quite independent before? If you relied on a lot of people before, and now you've got to do everything on your own, maybe it's more daunting. If you're fiercely independent before, I don't know. I guess there's a lot of things, and I don't want to sort of, I don't know, shame anyone if they fall into one camp or the other. But I would I think I don't know. I always try to encourage people to, you know, it's not the end of the world. You can be independent. Like I know I'm low level, incomplete, and strong and healthy. And I know there's a lot of different spinal cord injuries, but
Yeah.
you know there are a lot of examples. No matter what your injury level, and no matter like what your body shape, there are people that are doing things independently, fiercely independent, and achieving so much. And there are other people that don't handle it very well, and I don't really know what the difference is. I don't know. Well, all I can hazard a guess at is the mindset before their injury carries
Yeah.
on. You know.
Yeah, I think that it plays a big part of it. And like just because you are one way at one time doesn't mean you can't change. And, I was really quite discouraged after my injury and spent a long time sort of being lost and not really sure of what my potential was.
Mm,
So if you are that way, it doesn't mean that you can't, change and become fiercely independent. Uh, but yeah, it's an interesting thing for me to see. And I hate to be that person that like gets annoyed when people are kind of the ones that are really struggling and whining, but sometimes when you try and help somebody see, you know, the silver lining or be grateful for things and they just don't have it, you just go, okay, I don't know, I can't help you, I don't know how to help you, which is really, I guess, like, discouraging for me as an individual with a spinal cord injury who prides herself in trying to help people. But if you try and help them and then they just, like, there's always a negative rebuttal, then I don't know what to do with that, other than be like, yeah, I hear you, and that's not going to help you, you know. So I'm not really sure what the answer is to that, but
I think
yeah.
for some people it just takes longer. Like, I think I went through a period of immediately, like, obviously I'm absolutely helpless, I don't know what to do, to like, oh, maybe I could be. And then I sort of had this, like, in rehab I had a huge surge of enthusiasm, and then that waned, like, after a while, like after about 9 months I had a huge mental health dip, and then probably about 3 months after that it went up again. But so I guess life's a roller coaster. So I guess
Yeah.
for these people, maybe sometimes they just need a little bit more time to come to terms with it. It is a hard thing to come to terms with. It's just once you come to terms with it, maybe you look back and in hindsight you forget how hard it was, and you're like, oh well, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm here now. So you know, for you to get where I am, it's not that hard, but you forget the struggle.
Oh yeah, yeah, I forget the struggle. I forget what it's like to be able-bodied. So I've been in a wheelchair so long, I don't even remember
Mm.
what it's like to walk or any of that stuff. So, yeah, I think part of it is just, you know, time and uh I don't know, it's like that thing with time that allows you to just kind of get used to whatever your circumstances are, no matter how hard they are. But yeah. How's your rehab going? Speaking of, you know, getting on with things.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, thanks for asking. I've got a little video to share with you, but I thought I would. Last week, I said that. So, for those of you that don't know, just quick recap. I've gone back to rehab after 5 years. I'm trying to wean off of baclofen under supervision. It's a really privileged thing that I'm going back to rehab, and I'm having trouble. I've got mixed feelings going back there. So I remember I said to you last week about how I normally, when I go swimming, I just wheel straight up to the pool, I get in. But at rehab, they make me transfer onto multiple uncomfortable
yeah.
plastic surfaces before I get in. And it feels like less autonomous and it's frustrating. And the pool isn't very deep. But I figured out a way to just communicate that with them. I was like, listen, I hate this wheelchair that I have to use. You know, can we find a different one that I can self-propel with? Even, and it's one of those commode wheelchairs, so I can
Yeah.
push myself, but it still feels awkward. Like, you know,
Hmm.
when you're used to like a tiny little wheelchair, and then you've got this big plastic thing that
Yeah.
it just feels so awkward and
Weird.
slow
Yeah.
and clunky. And then you have to transfer onto this other plastic wheelchair, and then your legs go all spazzy, and then they try and like grab your legs, and you're like, no, it's fine. And you finally get in the pool. Anyway, I kind of I didn't know what to do with the pool as well, because I'm like, well, I don't know, like it's so shallow that when I swim, my toes drag
Oh,
along the floor, so I didn't want to do
that's
that.
weird.
So what I got was a pool noodle, and I put it under my knees, and I got them to put this jet on. So there's a jet in the pool, and I just swam against the jet with the pool noodle under my knees. So I was kind of like, you know, my knees up, and I was just swimming
Yeah.
against the current for like half an hour, and that got me pretty tuckered out, you know. And I was like, this is great exercise, you know, while the swimming pool here is closed. But then I still haven't managed to sort out the taxi, so I'm driving to and from rehab. It's 45 minutes there, it's 45 minutes back. Sometimes it's very frustrating. The road that I have to drive up is pretty sketchy. It's like a mountain road. Some people come around the corner on the other side of the road. It really stresses me out. And just generally, I just don't like driving that road. And then sometimes when I'm there, you know, it takes me. I'm driving for an hour and a half each day I go there, and sometimes the session will start 5 minutes late, and it'll end like a couple of minutes early, and I'm like, I feel really robbed, because I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I sacrificed a lot of my time to get here, and the session is started a little bit late and it ends a little bit early, and it's just that, you know, I've only got 30 minutes of physio, 30 minutes for each session. So if you rob a few minutes either side, it kind of
Yeah.
it irks me. So And I know that they're doing their best. And again, I really don't want to come across as ungrateful. It's a great opportunity. But again, mixed feelings, man. Like I drove home yesterday from rehab and I was really, really, really stressed out. I had to stop at the shop just to take some deep breaths because I had a close call with two other vehicles that I felt were very close to me. And I was like, why are you, like irresponsible drivers on the road? Again, it was raining. I don't like driving in the rain. And my legs were really spazzy, even though I was at rehab and swimming. Like, I don't like driving with spazzy legs. I was quite uncomfortable. Again, I also needed a wee. And I was just like, yeah, you know what? I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze here. Like, it is giving me something to do. It is awesome. My girlfriend's gone away for a couple of weeks, so it's filling my time. It's ticking a lot of boxes, but it's also causing me stress and discomfort. So yeah, I have opposing ideas of whether it's great or whether it's not. So that's how I'm feeling.
I will tell you that driving, especially on like hilly roads, stresses me out so much. So if there is a like choice between going somewhere I want on the other side of like a mountain or staying home, I really struggle with, going, okay, I'm going to go. And I drove like I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now. We drove to British Columbia, which is Western Canada, through the Rocky Mountains, and they're humongous mountains in this part of the Rocky Mountain Belt. And we drove there with Joe, and he flew home because he had to go home early. And then I drove home the rest of like the whole way. It was the most stressful drive of my life. I got home and my arms were so sore from like white knuckling it, because you're literally driving like on the edge of a mountain, and I'm scared of heights to begin with. And so I just hate it. And then people, like you say, are stupid. We're driving through national parks with low speed limits, and people will pass in ridiculously unsafe areas just to get ahead of somebody else. There's lots of truck traffic, lots of traffic from like RVs and people going on holidays. So it's just really stressful. And we did that when we went on holidays in Montana too, because we were going through the southern part of the Rocky Mountain Belt in Montana, because it follows from Canada down directly south. And so the mountains weren't as big, but it's still really windy. You're still following like trucks and RVs, and it's just really stressful for me. And so yeah, I totally feel you. Like if my rehab was on the other side of a drive that was that stressful, I would really like question whether the thing that I was getting there was worth the stress that I was putting myself through to get there. So I don't know. Like that would be a hard choice for me.
So that's the current situation, but I'm highlighting the negatives. But there are a lot of positives. I want to share a video with you that this is what I was up. Oh, here we go. So this is a sped up video, but these are the sort of stretches that I was showing my physio Dominic what I was doing, that I can do at home. And then he was we've been trying to stretch my back and my hip flexors. So there he's saying like, if you do this stretch, it's really good for your hip flexors. And it was really hard. It took me a lot of time to get into that position because I was so stiff. And also my back is, so these are exercises that are strengthening those back muscles, which are very, very weak. But also my back is fused with metal rods. So it's actually very difficult for me to do that bend. But after these exercises here, it was actually a lot easier for me to get up in that position. And that's a really good position for stretching my hip flexors. They have a bike here. This pedals my legs for me. So it moves automatically. So that's kind of good for like joint articulation. And I can go on that for, half an hour if I want to use that in between sessions. Oh, and this is just me, I guess, showing off because I do physical activity as well. And I just said to the guy, I want to do pull-ups on that thing. And he said, how are you going to do that? So I put a rope on there and I climbed up the rope and I did some pull-ups and that was just me just kind of showing off. But yeah, so those are the sort of things I get up to in rehab. So again, I don't want to say that it's totally useless. It's great. I love, I've got a great friendship with my physiotherapist. He's really great. We're working on a lot of my stretching the hip flexors and strengthening my upper back, or sort of my lower back, upper back. And yeah, it's great. It's a wonderful facility. So these are the positive things that are happening.
I can't get over how like amazing your form is in your pull-ups and your chin-ups. Like it's crazy. Like your body just stays so straight. Like my legs are dangling and being weird, and yeah, you're just, and your form is just crazy. Like I can do one pull-up before I'm like, oh yeah, it hurts, I'm done. Um, and yours is just like, it's so good. Every time I
Well,
see it, I'm like, you look better than half the able-bodied people that I know that are trying to do that. Like and you can't use the momentum thing that a lot of people do. Like they swing their legs and stuff. So yours is full upper body, and you're not doing it fast. Like, you're doing it slow and intentional, and yeah,
well,
ridiculously good.
thanks so much. But I've been skipping leg day.
That's hilarious. Not really though, because your legs are so spazzy. Like it's amazing. I know it's like a blessing and a curse, because it's kind of annoying, but it's also kind of nice when you're working out like that your legs just totally like extend and flex, so that it's almost creating like, the core support that you wouldn't otherwise have if you didn't have such like bad spasms.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I actually got a comment saying on the last video, because I spent half of that video in just my pants, that
Yeah.
my legs didn't look like paralyzed legs. And how,
No.
and I thought to myself, yeah, you're right. Because I've seen other videos with paraplegics and their legs look so atrophied and so thin. And I know I've only
Yeah.
been injured for just over 5 years. We're coming up to 6 nearly. So good 5.5 years. But because of my spasms, the thing that I complain the most about, my legs haven't atrophied, and because I work out and I consume a lot of protein, I think my legs do have maintained a lot of muscle mass. And you know what? It's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it, but I looked back at that video and I thought, you know what? I definitely look like the guy that skips leg day at the gym, but I don't look like your typical paralyzed, atrophied, skinny-legged paraplegic. And I
Yeah.
thought that is down to a lot of spasticity. So it is actually a real blessing.
Yeah, I think like my legs are definitely skinny, but I'm like kind of the same as you. Like I have enough spasms that my legs haven't totally atrophied like a crazy amount. Like if I'm wearing shorts, I look pretty proportional, like if I see myself in pictures and stuff. But my shins, like that area, are pretty skinny. On my left leg, so I don't have as much spasms on that leg. My right leg spasms a lot, so it maintains more tone. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting concept, I guess, that having the spasms keeps your legs like toned, but it's also kind of annoying for the person that has to deal with the spasms.
Yeah, but I said this on a podcast. I did a podcast with Brian this week as well. Brian Kinney,
Hmm.
great guy. I love him. But I was listening to also Wheelchair Rick. He does Wheelchair Wednesdays, and I listen to a lot of his podcasts. And he interviews people with spinal cord injuries, and they go through all the things that, for example, so he asked them, what do you miss most? And one of the guys says, oh, I miss sweating. He's like, I used to love to get a good sweat on. I used to run, and nothing that I can do now gives me that. And I can't sweat either. And I was like, wow, I haven't been grateful for the ability to sweat in so long. And I do
Hmm.
realize that the more of those stories I listen to, the more privileged I feel with my spinal cord injury, being a low-level paraplegic, incomplete. I'm like, wow, like I know, I knew, it's obvious to us in the community that every spinal cord injury is as unique as a fingerprint, but mine really is pretty good. I mean, obviously, it's a hard pill to swallow when you first get injured, but like the muscle tone, the sensation, like I've got it really quite easy, especially on my bowel routine taking like less than 10 minutes. I've got it quite easy, and sometimes I forget that, and it's quite nice to be reminded of just how easy I have it compared to others, and I'm really grateful.
Yeah, I think that's like one of those things that like there's this like hierarchy of disability that like nobody really talks about, and it's kind of hard to talk about your disability and the challenges that you face, especially when there are other people that are facing even like bigger challenges than you.
Mm.
And I don't know about you, but like, unless it's, I don't generally get annoyed when other people share their struggles. But sometimes I do. And so I'm always like wondering when I'm sharing my struggles, because I have a friend, Tash, who's amazing. And she's been on my channel before, and she's a high level quadriplegic who needs like almost full time care. And every time like I complain about something, she's like, oh, so inconvenient when you have to transfer into your car and you get tired. Like, I mean, oh my God. So she makes jokes about that all the time. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm being so annoying, aren't I? And so I've been that person before, but then like recently I was at it was like a disability employment awareness event. And there were different speakers with different disabilities talking about their employment and how their disability has affected their employment or how it's helped their employment, just their experience essentially. And all the speakers were so amazing. And I thought they were all so great. But then there was this one lady who was talking about and complaining about her disability being so hard. And she's like, she goes, they nicked a nerve in my right hand when I had surgery because she had like a heart attack and they had to do a bypass or something. So they nicked a nerve in her right hand. And she goes, this is my right hand. She's like, I can barely use my right hand. And she's like talking with her right hand as she's like flinging it around. And she goes, do you know how hard it is to wipe your butt with a hand that barely works? And like
Oh
all
my
this
God.
stuff. And she was just like, everything she said annoyed the shit out of me. I'm like, you walked out on the stage, you're talking about how hard your disability is and how annoyed you are when people use accessible stalls. I'm like, you can walk. Like, what is your problem? And then she was like talking about how her nerve got nicked and she will never have the full use of her right hand that she's like yammering on with. And I found myself so annoyed. Like, I was just like, you sound like the whiniest person on the planet. And it was so annoying. And so I'm like, is there a hierarchy of disability? Or there shouldn't be, because everybody's experience is unique. But it was just really interesting that I was like, I got so curious. I'm like, why is this bugging me so much? Like, why is she because I have full use of my hands too. So like, it's
Mm.
not even like, she might have a worse time wiping her butt than I do because her hand is actually like weaker or something. But I just found myself being so annoyed at this lady. I was just like, you're talking to a crowd of people that like, there's like high level quadriplegics like sitting right in the front, and there's like people in wheelchairs, and you're sitting there talking about how hard your life is because you have type 2 diabetes, which is like preventable, and your hand got
Yeah.
nicked when you had a heart attack that was probably preventable because you're like 100 pounds overweight. Like, this lady was just bugging me. So that sounds very judgy, and I realize that. So if anybody's watching, you're like, holy, Brittany's being a judgy bitch right now, I totally understand. And I know that that's like, which is why I got curious about it. But anyway, is there a hierarchy of disability for you? And do you find yourself getting annoyed when people who have what you would like deem as
Yeah.
easier things than you like complain?
How dare you, Brittany? How dare you? You mocked this poor lady. Do you not know how hard it is to use this right hand? Poor lady. I can only
Sorry,
imagine how tough it is for her. And then you're just like, oh no, seriously though, tough crowd. Like, oh my God, you were probably not the only one in the room that felt that way. I can imagine that almost being like a hidden camera TV show where like someone comes out and's like, oh my God, my
yeah,
hand in front of a room full of wheelchairs. Do you know how hard it is to wipe my bum? You're like, well, yeah, try doing that every day,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah, that does sound, yeah, I can imagine you probably weren't the only one in the room that felt that way. That sounds absolutely awful. So yeah, I'm with you. I've already disliked this lady, and I've only just got a secondhand account of what she said.
Uh, but you don't find yourself like, I don't know, like sometimes people will come, like they'll be talking to me that have just met me, and they'll like share something that's like trying to relate to me. They're like, I had cervical cancer, 5 years ago or something, and it's like a way to try to relate to you, but you're like, okay, like, I'm sorry, I'm just really sorry you had cancer. But like, it's not the same. And I don't want to ever have cancer, but I would never be like, somebody's like telling me they have cancer, and I'd be like, yeah, I know, I have to stick my finger up my butt to poop. Like, it's not the same. Like, it's not the
Yeah,
same thing.
I know, I
So
know.
I'm not really sure. Like, I think it's interesting that we all have our own struggles, and they're just as hard for us, no matter how trivial they may seem to other people. Because like like I said, when I complain around my friend Tash, she makes fun of me and she's totally like awesome about it. And then it doesn't put me in my place, but it just is like reminds me that like I have so much to be grateful for, that she misses out on. And she's grateful for so many things in her life too, because she has, the ability to have, and she has the money to have a caregiver, and she has a great, not husband, they're not married, but she has a great partner, and she has a little baby, and, so she has all these things that she's grateful for and realizes that she's privileged in too. But she's just one of those friends that's really good at being like, shut up, like,
Yeah.
don't complain about something that is really not that big of a deal in your life. And then I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, it's totally not a big deal.
Yeah. I get it.
But
I totally get
I
it.
never,
So
yeah,
I was in the gym the other day and I was working out, and my friend who I play poker with, he comes in the gym and he's like, and he was like, I just need to work out. I'm in such a bad mood. And he had a mountain biking accident recently where he hurt his shoulder, and he was like complaining to me about how annoyed he was that he's back riding his bike. He said, like, after 4 weeks, I'm back on my bike, and I'm just so annoyed that I can't ride
yeah,
to the same level as I used to, and I'm
mm-hmm.
a bit scared on the trails, and I'm rehabbing it, but it still hurts, and it's just so annoying, man. It's just so annoying. And he was really, really, really laying it on thick, and I'm like, bro, like, what are you complaining about? You've got a little hurty shoulder. You're complaining to a guy who can't ride his bike anymore. And then I said to him, because I was like, you know what, this has gone completely over his head. But, also, I don't want to be the sort of guy that's like, one up you. Like, you can't complain
Yeah,
to me about your hurty shoulder because I'm in a wheelchair. But also, at the same time, you kind of, I don't know, like, so I do want to add that, like, I really am aware that some people, when you do have that, like, if
yeah,
you've broken a limb, if you've got like a torn ligament, it can be very frustrating. But I thought I would just say, I'm doing a podcast this afternoon with a guy who got injured mountain biking. He got paralyzed going over a jump. I think you might like listening to it. He's like, oh yeah, yeah. Just to kind of just plant the seed of, like,
yeah,
there are people that are like way more, I
yeah,
guess, less complainy and more injured.
yeah,
But I guess he was just having a little vent at the
yeah,
time. But it just seemed like, I've got this two, like when you can hold these
yeah,
two thoughts of, like, one, I'm like, don't care, like, that's so minimal, shut the hell up. Two, that does suck for you right now in this moment. You're acutely
yeah,
feeling that pain, and I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. But at the same time, I don't know. I
yeah,
guess everyone struggles, but I don't know. Do you ever get that when people complain to
yeah.
you and you're like, well, what the hell?
Oh, I do. Like I do. And I think it's interesting because you do hold two things at one time. Like I always say to people, don't minimize your suffering just because you think mine is more. Because there are some people who are like, oh, I have no right to complain about this right now, but it's so frustrating. And so when they preface it like that, then I'm
Mm,
immediately like, no, don't
yeah, yeah.
feel bad about it at all. Which is the same thing that you do all the time. Like you're like, I realize I'm privileged. I realize that I have so much to be grateful for, but this is really frustrating for me right now. And I think when you just like acknowledge that, like, I don't understand what your suffering is like, but this is what mine is currently like, then it like sets the stage for that. Like I know that we're different, but here's my truth kind of thing. And I think that like helps. Like there was one of the speakers that was at this event, and he had meningitis and he lost both legs. He lost a lot of function in his one hand, like it barely worked anymore. He had skin grafts everywhere. And he was the most amazing, positive guy ever. And afterwards, when they were asking him questions like, because he was a teacher, a drama teacher, and one of his students recommended him for this speaking thing. And he's like just such a cool, funny guy. And he minimized so much of like his own suffering. Like he was just like, I'm so glad that I can still walk on my
Mm,
prosthetics. And I'm so glad that I still have my hand that has very minimal use, but it's, still there. And I'm glad that I didn't die of meningitis. And I'm glad that, like, he was just all the time, he was like sandwiching like his suffering with something else to be grateful
mm,
for, that this experience was extremely hard and this is what it taught me. And here's why I'm so much more grateful for these things now. And it was just a different delivery than this other lady who was basically like, I had a shitty life. People called me, you know, bossy, and it translated into me being a really great business owner because I like to show people that I can do stuff they don't think I can. And I also got hurt, or I got like diabetes and had this heart attack. And now I live with all these things. And like she was just like very complainy. So I think it's partly just the delivery. Because like I said, if there's somebody that sandwiches it with, I know this isn't the same, but here's why, here's what I'm going through, it feels so much better. It just feels so much better.
Yeah, I get it. And when you said that, when they preface it with, you know, like, I know you're not the right person to be complaining to, that helps so much because you've given it context immediately, right? When they don't that, I don't know, it's just, you kind of, like you say, read the room, man. Like, you're complaining about a temporary injury to someone who's permanently disabled. Like, you know what, in a year's time, you probably won't even remember that. Like, it might be still like a tiny bit hurty, but like,
Yeah,
you're going
I
to make a
know.
full recovery, man. Just be patient.
Exactly. I know. My mom like hurt her knee a while ago, and mom, if you're watching this, go to physio, please.
Yeah,
She won't
yeah,
go to
yeah.
physio. She's like, I'm not going to go to physio. But she was like complaining so much about like, I can't do this and I can't do this. And I'm like, yeah, temporarily. Like, just go to physio, rest your knee. And she happened to be moving at the time, so it was really inconvenient because she had to be able to like do stuff. But she was complaining so much about her knee not being able to work. And I was like, Mom, like, now you know, like a snippet of what my life is like whenever I've moved. Like, I can't even lift any of the
Yeah,
stuff. And you know, it is possible for you to not do that even though you want to. You don't have to lift that super heavy box and actually hurt yourself. Because I'm like, if you damage your knee even farther and you become permanently disabled, you're going to be really pissed that you didn't just
yeah,
rest it and heal it. So yeah, it's always one of those things that you're just like, yeah, you never really know how to receive people's information and sort of venting sessions without coming across like a dick when you're like, Kat, don't complain to me, which I never do anyway. I would never do that. I didn't do that to that
yeah, yeah.
lady either. But yeah, it's mostly just thoughts in my own head because my brain is sometimes a judgy bitch.
No, I get it. No, it's fine. I reckon we should spend the last few minutes addressing some of the questions
Yeah.
from the people that are watching live. I got this one at the beginning. I kind of earmarked it for now. Sonia says, "Wasn't there a mean female neighbor who made Fredo feel bad for wanting to get from his car to his home?" Number one, thanks for remembering. That is part of my story. Yes, indeed. And that was actually a huge catalyst for my mental health dip immensely. And
Oh.
so this is going back to when we were talking about, you know, are men nicer to people with disabilities? I had problems with my neighbors in my last place. I've gone over this before, but I guess it's worth repeating. I had a temporary ramp built up to the front door, and some of the, like a third of the ramp was accidentally built on my neighbor's property without me asking permission. And they both had a real grudge against me because of that. And I don't know whether it was because I was English and they were French, but he just really didn't like me. And then one day, the taxi dropped me off from rehab in the early days, and I the woman's car was in the way, so I couldn't pass. There's an alleyway, and her car was backed into it, and I just asked her very politely to move so I could get to my house, and she was like, "No, I'm not moving. You can go round." And so my apartment was on a very steep hill, and to go round would mean going down. Oh, and it was raining. To go down a really steep hill in the rain, to go all the way around the building, and then up a very steep hill on gravel, and then across a field just to get to, like, you know, where I was. So she was actually a bit of a bitch. And yeah, she was mean to me again because they were holding a grudge against me for something I didn't even know. Like, I only found out that they were annoyed about this ramp because if you look at it, it doesn't look like it's on their property at all, but the property line goes diagonally across. And he was like, "This little bit of the ramp is on my property, and if I could get you to remove it if I wanted to." And I was like, "Why would you do that, man?" Like, it was really awful. And yeah, so some women are dicks to people with disabilities, and that
Yeah.
was a unique case of her just being a knob.
I had a similar experience with a bus driver. And there's like where I used to take Jamie to play school when she was like 4, there was one curb cut and it was in the bus lane. And this lady would park on like on the curb cut every day when I would come and drop Jamie off to preschool. So I would have to ask her to move. And she begrudgingly moved the bus, even though she knew every day I'm coming with my daughter and I'm in a wheelchair to get on this curb, like to get to the building. And one of the days I said, can you please move forward? And she goes, nope, you can go around. And she said the same thing to me. And I have to go all the way around the parking lot to another side of the building to get in. And I was like, what? And all of these like high school kids were like, what did she just say? Like all these boys got up and they were like, move your bus. Like, why are you not moving for this lady? I was so proud of all these kids. And she was like, no, I'm not moving. I don't have to move. This is the bus lane. And they were like, she's in a wheelchair. You're covering her access to the building. And then she wouldn't move. So I went in and I got the principal and I was like, there's a bus driver out there that won't move. And he was like, oh yeah, she will move. And he went out and she moved. But I like, it was so, I'm like, what? Why? Like, you're literally sitting in the bus behind the driver's seat. Like, what have I done to you? What have I done
Yeah.
to you that makes you not want to move so I have access to the building when I'm with my little kid? It was really odd. And I think that there's just some people like that are like, I don't know what their problem is, but they like just want to hurt people. Because like what were they using that little snippet of their lawn or their yard for you to get in?
It
Like,
was
no.
no, it was a combination of things. When my friends built the ramp, they had left some building materials like lent up against their building, and it was really irking him that it took me so long to get rid of them. I had no idea. He could have just knocked on the door and been like, "Hey, can you move these building materials because they're leaning against my house." But he'd like
Yeah.
internalized it and he'd held this grudge as if I was doing it like some sort of passive aggressive move. I was coming to terms with having a fucking spinal cord injury, man.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't like, being a dick. So yeah, it was really interesting. And then this is what I'm about to say is really, really dark. So forgive me. But when I went in to my house, when she finally begrudgingly moved, I was so low. This is difficult for me to say. I was like, I'm going to kill myself. That'll teach her. Because I was so
Yeah.
I was massively depressed anyway. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I was like, oh, when she finds out I've killed myself, how guilty will she feel then? And I was going to end my own life. Number one, I was absolutely bawling my eyes out, like really fucking sad. But at the same time, I thought it would like teach her a lesson. Like,
Yeah.
but so yeah, in the end, I came to terms with it through a little psychedelic ceremony. Like a few weeks later, I just thought the best thing that I can do for myself is forgive her because I'm holding on to some hatred towards this lady
Yeah.
and it's kind of destroying me a little bit. So the most powerful thing I can do is just forgive her. She was a knob on a long enough timeline. Everyone's a knob. She was probably having a bad day. She probably didn't realize how much it affected me. And I don't have to like go knock on the door, say, hey, by the way, I forgive you. But I had to let
Yeah.
go of it in my own heart because I had to move on. And yeah, that was a really powerful thing for me to do. And I don't really feel that bad towards her nowadays because it's just part of my story. And, she was having a bad day and took it out
Yeah.
on me.
Yeah. I think that's like a really good testament to the fact that for like assertive communication, like if something is actually bothering you or affecting you, you have to talk to people about it. Because if people don't even know, like if your building materials were on their house and you had no idea that it was even bothering them and they hadn't said anything, then you'd be like, oh, they don't mind. Like I have time. You know what I mean? It wouldn't even
Yeah.
matter. Like if they just came over and were like, you know what? These have been here for a really long time. Do you think you could get somebody to come and, remove them? It's just kind of, bugging me. And then if you would have been like, oh, absolutely, I'll get a buddy to come over and I'll get him to move it like right away. Like no big deal, right? But yeah, there was another comment somewhere that was like addressing whether you are afraid to live in the area that you were hurt in. I cannot find it for the life of me,
Oh,
but
thanks.
somebody,
That's the one I was looking for, actually. Yeah.
I can't find it.
Let me scroll through. Oh, So I can't find that comment, but
It was there. It was there.
yeah. Da,
So
da, da,
maybe they
da.
removed it. Oh, I see. It's Trade News Center. Why do
Oh yeah.
you yeah, there.
Thank you. Trade News Center. That's a yeah. Anyway, why do you keep living in the same place where you got injured? Isn't it bringing you nightmares and chills? That's a really good question. So it doesn't bring
Mhm.
me nightmares or chills because I had my accident up in the mountains and I never go up there. But oh, that reminds me of something. I'm just going to write it down. I'll just put that so we can address that because there was something I wanted to talk about. No, but to be honest, I could probably live somewhere more accessible because it's a small village in the mountains. But I keep living here because I love my apartment. It's wheelchair accessible. It's beautiful. I like my landlady. My girlfriend lives here. It's a lovely community. I've got a lot of friends here, and that's why I still live here.
Yeah. I think I don't have well, I don't really have a memory of my accident. Do you have memory, like full memory of your accident?
I got concussed at the time. I did a
Mhm.
great podcast with Pete, the guy who was there at the time, and he went through the things that happened, and he said that I was concussed, and I kept, when you got short-term memory loss, I kept rediscovering my paralysis, like, oh my god, I can't move my legs, like, and it kept coming as a shock to me.
Oh,
But obviously,
that's
I didn't,
kind of
I didn't,
funny, but also
yeah,
horrible.
yeah, no, and I couldn't remember it, so that was, yeah, I guess it is kind of funny. Um, Oh yeah, something I wanted to bring up. So I'm so glad I remembered this. I was out for a little bike ride the other day, and I bumped into some friends, and they were saying about like going to some dancing club, and I was like, oh, a little known fact: I used to be a dancer. I used to do ballroom and Latin dancing, and it was one of the things that I regret giving up. And the reason I gave it up because I thought that the other boys, if they found out that I was doing it, they would think I was a bit
Oh,
gay, and I think that's a really lame excuse to have
yeah.
given something up. And then they started talking about gymnastics, and I was like, oh, I used to do gymnastics too. And wouldn't that have been good? Like if I knew that in the future I would have been a snowboarder. And then my friend said, oh, yeah, you would have stomped that cliff. So for those of you that don't know, I snowboarded off a cliff, and that's how I got paralysis. And I thought, oh, I don't know how I feel about that comment. But my immediate response was, oh, yeah, I'd have probably backflipped it. But I just thought, like, I snowboarded off a cliff accidentally and fell onto some rocks and broke my spine. I wasn't
Oh,
trying to do something that was out of my comfort zone. It wasn't like I wasn't trying to send the cliff. So it was just an off the cuff comment. She didn't mean anything by it, but I just wanted to bring it up with you because I wondered how, like it was probably inappropriate, and it did take me by surprise. But I don't know. What do you think?
like as if you had like some control over what happened?
Like
Is
if I
that
was
like
bet
how, yeah, like if you
if
were,
I had continued my gymnastics as a child,
yeah,
I would have. I don't know. And also like we're just chatting, like we're just. I don't know why it was appropriate to bring up that I snowboarded off a cliff. I don't know. It just took me by surprise. I was like, oh, okay. And again, it wasn't malicious at all. It just.
yeah,
I was like, oh, like what if that was like really traumatic for me? Like you just brought that up, like.
yeah.
Anyway, it was. I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up to you and get your opinion on it.
I think people say the most awkward things that can be really triggering, and they don't understand when they are saying something really inappropriate. Like every once in a while, somebody will talk about like me, like with my snowmobile accident. Like, what if I was the one that did something? And I'm like, why would you say that? Like, why would you say that? Like, because I don't know. And the boy died. And I'm like, so I got paralyzed, don't remember a thing. This boy died, and nobody knows what happened. And now you're gonna put into my brain that maybe it was me that caused the accident and that killed like somebody. And I was like, why would you say that? Like, and I know they're not being malicious about it, but like they're just like, like who knows? Maybe you did something, maybe he did something. And I'm like, no, I don't want to think about any of that stuff. So it's like one of those weird things that I think people just don't understand they don't understand kind of the triggering aspect of what they're saying, because they don't have necessarily something like that. It also is kind of along the lines of like that thing where, like, you know, if you were fitter, this wouldn't have happened. Or if you were smarter, this wouldn't have happened. Or if you were like, you know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of things like that, that if you had just taken better driving, you know, courses, you wouldn't have gotten that car accident. Or if you did this, you wouldn't have. And it's just so dumb because it's, you can't change it. But yeah, it's interesting the things that people will say to you that they don't think anything of. Or maybe they
Yeah,
do and they just don't say anything. I don't know. I said something in
it
a
was.
meeting. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say it was totally off the cuff. She just blurted it out, and I don't think she even thought of it either.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't double think it, but it just, I don't know. Yeah.
That visual that you just gave me of snowboarding off a cliff, um, I can't even imagine like the fear, like when you're, did you think it was like, I'm so curious now, did you think it was like a spot you were supposed to be snowboarding, it ended up just being something bad, or did you like take a wrong turn? Like I'm so curious about this whole
Oh,
situation now.
I
Because I
thought that
know
you
that
knew.
you were hurt. No,
Yeah.
like I knew that you were hurt snowboarding, but I didn't ever hear like the full story. And I
Ah.
probably watched a video of it ages ago, but it's not ringing a bell.
Well, allow me to indulge you. So basically, what happened was I was with my friend Pete, and it had snowed. It wasn't exactly a powder day, but there was a lot of fresh snow to be had, and I wanted to take him to a place that I'd been shown like a week ago or something. Like to there would be fresh snow, and I'd be like, oh, this way, Pete. But we had to duck under a rope, and it was out of bounds. Um, and I wasn't 100% sure that where we were going, but I knew that we had to go round the cliff and then down, like, you know, into this cool little couloir, and then come out, and then Pete would, in my mind, like Pete would be like, oh, cool, man, it's so cool that you know these like secret stashes, and I'd be like, yeah, cool. So, but what happened was the clouds came rolling in, and all of a sudden we were caught in a complete whiteout, and I remember thinking that I was going in the right direction, but the whole time I had turned and I was heading straight towards the cliff. I had no idea. So I couldn't see it.
Oh
Like
my
when you're in a
God.
whiteout, if you're snowboarding in a whiteout, for those people who don't know what that's like, you can't see anything. The floor is white, the sky is white, you can't see anything. Sometimes you don't even know if you're moving or not. You're just like, am I even moving? And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm moving. Like, so the snow goes up and down, and I was trying to like find any point of reference, like where I was going, like sort of trying to pump for speed a little bit, and then whoo, like, you know, that feeling on a roller coaster of like, ooh, and then I just was like, oh fuck, and then I just fell. And then I saw rocks, and you can see rocks because they're not white. And I remember like, bam, so I bounced like 3 times, like boom, boom, and then as I turned around in midair, I remember this like gnarly looking rock, like quite all
Oh my
jaggedy
God.
and sharp. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to hit that with my back. And then like, boom. And then like the next thing I know, or the next thing I remember is my friend Pete being there. And he's like, are you all right? And I'm like, well, yeah, well, again, the memory's so fuzzy, but yeah, I was paralyzed. And I remember thinking I was in so much pain, the most pain I've ever been in my life. I remember like screaming and then like trying to get up, but you know, I felt like I was glued to the floor because you know, you can't move your legs. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, like what the hell? And like felt like my body was really heavy. And he was like, don't worry, there's help on the way. So what had happened was, another really cool story was Pete's story, which again, for those of you that want to check it out, it's on my channel. There's a podcast I did with Pete, and he
Yeah.
tells his side of the story. So he is like, apparently I'm in front, and like every time like I dip down and come back up, like he's following me. And so his only point of reference is me. I dip down, I come back up, I dip down, I come back up, and then I dip down and I don't come back up. And I remember he said to me, he was in two minds. He was like, oh, don't be a pussy, just go for it. Fredo knows the way. Fredo knows the way. And then he was like, do you know what? Actually, no. And then he stopped right on the edge of the cliff and was like, fuck. So he was so close to snowboarding straight off the cliff after me, which would have been awful. Like, I don't know if we'd have both died up there. So what happened was he stopped at the top of the cliff, looked down, saw me, got called the mountain rescue on his headphones, took his board off, went around, climbed down, and then went across to me, and that's when he found me, and then the rest of it is kind of blurry. I was on a bit of the mountain that still wasn't safe. So when ski patrol arrived, they, I was begging them, please give me something for the pain. Please give me something for the pain. And they said, we can't give you anything for the pain. We don't have it. Like you're still in a pretty treacherous spot. We need to get you to the doctor. You're not out of danger yet.
Oh my God.
So they got me onto this little stretcher. They managed to get me down. And then I remember one thing I do remember is I looked back at the cliff and I was like, shit, did I snowboard off that cliff? And they were like, yeah. And I remember thinking I should be dead. And that's when I guess that was the first glimmer of gratitude. I was like, no one should survive that. Like that's a 20-meter fall or 50 feet if you want to use like freedom measurement. Yeah. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, it was.
I'm going to go listen to that podcast right after this. That's friggin' crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was emotional actually. And then there were loads of things as well because Pete. So again, for me, like, and you might relate to this, like when the injury happens to you, you're the center of attention. As soon as the doctor saw me, he gave me, I think, ketamine. So like I was completely knocked out. They drove me to the ambulance, drove me to the hospital in an ambulance, and it was all. But then Pete was there with my snowboard under his arm, and he had to call my girlfriend at the time and was like, hey, listen, Fred's on his way to the hospital. An accident happened. It's really bad. Like he said, he can't feel his legs. We don't know how bad it is. He had to find my car, drive my car down to Lou, pass on the bad news to Lou. And then it was just so stressful for everyone involved. But for me, like I had no idea that Pete had done all that until he told me on the podcast. So it was really crazy. Yeah. So that was the story of how I got paralyzed, really.
That's crazy. That's nuts. I know it's like so hard to go back and like interview people about your accident. I did that when I went back to my accident site, which I'd never seen before, in 2020, maybe 2019. I can't remember exactly when, but yeah. And then when I was talking to like all of the people who were like 14, 15 at the time about what their experience was, it was crazy. And I actually want to do that this year for my injury anniversary, is interview my mom, my dad, my brother, and my sister about what their each experiences were. Because my brother was like 10, my sister was 15, and obviously my parents were my parents. But because everybody's experience is so different with like the follow. But that's a crazy story. Oh my God. Like, oh my God, that, like, I almost want to cry a little bit because I don't know, it's just really scary to be like what you do, you never know when your life is going to change. Like you never know what's going to happen. And you always think it's going to be fine. Like that was my first thought. Like it's fine. It's going to be fine. I'll get home. And you'd think that no matter what you do, no matter how dangerous it is, and obviously like a response that your body, a stress response your body has to fear when you can't do anything about it. Like you got in the situation and you were in the whiteout. There's nothing you can do but keep going. Do you know what I mean? To get out of the situation. So, hey, that's crazy. Thank you for sharing.
No worries.
Yeah.
There's actually another small bit that I will add is actually there's a guy called Tom, and he was there on the day and he was riding with us for a bit, but he tumbled in the snow and his beanie and his goggles came off and he got snow in his goggles, and he was like, I can't get the fog out of my goggles, so I need to go down and dry them off. And I said, dude, you should really be wearing a helmet. And so he bounced and he was like, yeah, I need to go down and dry my goggles. The next run was the one that I snowboarded off a cliff. So him getting snow in his goggles and I guess not wearing a helmet potentially saved his life, because I don't know if because he was pretty loose. So he would have easily followed me off that cliff. Pete was pretty sensible, but Tom wasn't. And I remember Tom messaging me, because I have another podcast, by the way, called Apes on Tape. And I was doing, so he messaged me and said, I love the last podcast you did, by the way, it was great. And then I remember like, oh my God, you're the guy that was there on that day. So I got in touch and I was like, dude, do you remember this? Like, do you remember when you fell over and I said you should be wearing a helmet? And he was like, shit, yeah, I was. He didn't even realize he was there on that day. So then I recorded a podcast with him about that experience and from his point of view. And he heard about the accident, but he had never put 2 and 2 together that he was one run away from being involved in that incident.
Wow. That's crazy. Like little things that, you think might have saved your life, or you one of those missed chances or whatever. I know that like the doctors told my parents, because I wasn't wearing a helmet at my accident, which is crazy because I landed I was on the ground. I didn't have a traumatic brain injury, but they said if I was wearing a helmet, the way that I landed with the force, I probably would have broken my neck because of the weight of the helmet. And I would have died. So isn't that crazy that like me not wearing a helmet potentially saved my life, which is so weird because I was like crouched forward, and because my back, right where I was like trying not to like hit the ground with my head, I hit right in the center of my back, and it shattered the bone immediately when I hit the ground. But yeah, crazy. We both flew off cliffs. I was in a snowmobile and you were on a snowboard.
Yeah.
Crazy.
On that note, my helmet saved my life. There was I don't know. I don't think I've still got it. Otherwise, no. Anyway, my helmet had a huge crack in it, and I remember thinking, "Wow, that was." So I definitely hit my head on the way down, and the helmet saved my life for sure.
Wow. That's crazy. You never know like what's going to happen. And the funny thing, like 2 years after my accident, there was another snowmobile accident in my community, and the girl who was on the back was wearing a helmet, broke her neck in the fall from the weight of the helmet, which is crazy. And I'm going like, ugh, and she passed away. So you never know when those things are like, I would say like 90% of the time they're super important. I always make my kids wear helmets for everything. But every once in a while, I guess that, the way you fall can be really detrimental to your neck. But yeah, crazy. Yeah. Anyway, this is like a weird end to this podcast and this live. It's like very, I don't know, like one of those things that puts gratitude into so much more perspective, that we both probably should have died in our very traumatic accidents, and we didn't. We're here to talk about them today and share all of our really like crazy, and sometimes, I don't know, not like vulgar, but like, too much information for people. So thankfully,
I think so now I've given you guys some perspective on what happened to me. An off the cuff comment like, "Oh, maybe you'd have nailed that cliff," is quite inappropriate, because that could like, I don't really feel that like I can speak about it without it being traumatic. It was at the time, I guess, but but you can see how a comment like that could have quite easily brought up a quite traumatic flashback for me. And it was very just, I don't know. So maybe if anyone took anything away from that, is, maybe just think before you speak sometimes, because
really do. Like, I think just takes a second of introspection to think, like, is what I'm going to say appropriate? And sometimes you get it wrong. I said something in a meeting the other day that I'm like, that probably sounds very racist. Even though I wasn't trying to be at all. And now I'm super worried about it. So now I'm like going to go up to the guy that I was in the meeting with, because he was making fun of something. And I was like, it's so true though, but he can say it because he is that race, but I was saying it was so true. So then now I'm worried about it being like, it being one of those things that, I'm not privileged to say that because I don't belong to that culture. So now I'm going to go up to him and I'll be like, you know what? If I was like offensive, I'm sorry, I'm an idiot sometimes. And so yeah, we all get it wrong sometimes, but yeah, just think a little bit. So now I'm going to probably overthink what I'm going to say.
I wouldn't bother. To be honest, I think people are probably more sturdy and hardy than you give them credit for sometimes, but yeah, probably. Maybe it's worth mentioning it. Just before we bring it home, I just wanted to do a little bit of podcast housekeeping. I recorded a really nice podcast with my friend Benji Sunday, and I just released it yesterday. It's Apes on Tape podcast. It's a different podcast. Benji and I are very good friends. He's been struggling a lot lately with his mental health. Everything on the surface seems to be going really well, but he's in a bit of a funk, and I think it's just a beautiful conversation. It was almost like a therapy session. I think anyone can find it very, very relatable. You can find it on Spotify or Apple. If you just type in Apes on Tape, it's the Meditating Monkey, and the episode is called Summer Highs, Autumn Blues. And I think if you enjoy this podcast, you'll enjoy that one. And with that, is there anything you want to say before we bring it home?
I'm trying to think if there's anything important. No, just like, be kind, have positive thoughts, and I don't know, don't procrastinate, because that's my mantra this week is don't be an asshole and stop procrastinating. So if you are like me and you need somebody to remind you to just do the shit you need to do the shit you need to do.
Yeah. In fact, we actually talk a lot about that in that conversation. That podcast
Oh,
is
oh
pretty
my
good. Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna
Also, on a
listen.
very random note, I drew this this week, and I really thought it was quite creative. It's it's kind of like a
Uh,
burger pizza alien doodle.
yeah, it's
I
like
kind of
it's
like
like
it.
a burger UFO with
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the pizza being like the take me to your leader, you know.
yeah. I thought it was kind of cute. So yeah, that's what I got up to. Anyway, we've run over by like 20 minutes, but I
Mhm.
think it was good. You know, sometimes you don't
Yep.
want to cut it off in the flow. My bum's wiggling. I need a wee. We'll see you
Me
guys
too.
later. Thanks.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.